Hey, before you read about it on Facebook or Twitter or hear about it from your friends, find out what today's big stories really mean with me, Sean Hannity, today at 2, right here on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the Oscar gala last night, a new hashtag campaign has been launched, Amy.
Yeah.
You got your Me Too. You got your
Time's Up.
You got that.
Yeah.
Now, David Arquette tweeting out he's proud to join Ask More of Him hashtag at the Oscars because men can and must do more to stop violence against women in Hollywood and beyond. Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree with the sentiment, of course, but I'm not so sure I'm persuaded by the virtue signaling.
It's kind of, his reaction probably to Frances McDormand, who won Best Actress for 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. And she had a call to action, so to speak. Just listen. This is what she did during her acceptance speech.
If I may be so honored to have all the female nominees in every category stand with me in this room tonight. The actors. Meryl, if you do it, everybody else will. Come on. The filmmakers, the producers, the directors, the writers, the cinematographers.
It's like a Howard Dean moment.
The composers, the songwriters, the designers. Come on.
Yeah.
Look around, ladies and gentlemen, because we all have stories to tell and projects we need finance. Don't talk to us about it at the parties tonight. Invite us into your office in a couple days, or you can come to ours, whichever suits you best, and we'll tell you all about them. I have 2 words to leave with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Inclusion rider.
And then we're going to New Hampshire and South Carolina and Florida. Arr! Arr. Also, the movie that won Best Picture.
Oh yeah, here. Do you want to?
The worst Best Picture winner in the history of the Oscars. It's not close. Shape of Water.
Yes.
Belongs in the bin with Ishtar, not in the pantheon of great movies with Godfather and On the Waterfront. I'm sorry to say, but I know that the social justice warrior messaging, not to mention the amphibious lover, won over the hearts and minds of Academy voters. Everybody
wants a man-fish. Everyone wants to escape life and swim away in the Hudson River to get to the Amazon.
I think what did it, what cinched it for Shape of Water.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Hollywood. The Soviet Spy with the Heart of Gold.
Oh, right.
Oh, that was great, of course. Good. For more on this, why don't we talk to somebody who's actually survived in that milieu. He is Andrew Klavan, who's a famed Hollywood screenwriter in his own right, and he's also the author of the book The Great Good Thing, A Secular Jew Comes to Faith in Christ. Andrew, thank you for joining us, and who did you wear last night for the Oscars?
Well, this is an entire culture that doesn't believe in thoughts and prayers, but they think that putting a button on their lapel is going to change the world. I don't know. I was just seeing that their ratings plunged again. I don't know who watches this anymore. Who wants to see these misbehaving multimillionaires who live off our good graces come out and wag their fingers at us and tell us what we're doing wrong? I mean, the problems that they're highlighting about women and all, these are things that happened in Hollywood. These are things they did. So why are they sounding so self-righteous about it?
Well, and it bothers me, too, because Gary Oldman finally wins an Oscar because he's a great actor. And then there's, a headline saying why Kobe Bryant and Gary Oldman were the night's biggest tragedy. I understand about, Kobe Bryant, but, I mean, Gary Oldman, it's an allegation that his ex-wife made during a divorce, that he hit her or something. But, I mean, she never even filed charges. So it's like they lift you up and they slam you down in the same night.
Right, and Kobe Bryant was actually tried and found not guilty. So, you can charge anybody with anything, but that doesn't mean they did it. Oldman is getting attacked because he's a known conservative out here. He's one of the very few, and he's a great actor. But the thing is, they're all great. They're all very talented at what they do. Mm-hmm. It's a case of misplaced authority. It's kind of like Albert Einstein was a great scientist, and then he'd make these remarks about how world peace that made absolutely no sense. and people took him seriously because he was a great scientist. These people are great at reading lines in a convincing manner, and then they get up and make moral speeches, and we take them seriously as moral guides when they're not good moral guides. They don't behave well themselves. Their lives are a mess. They're usually fairly neurotic people, but they act well.
The Oscars provided a nice backdrop for this piece in City Journal. I don't know if you saw it, by Lance Moreau, who's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and he writes about what he calls the travesty culture in America. And you saw it, on display there in Hollywood last night. And he suggests that travesty is an addiction, and it occurs to me that it occurs to him, I'm reading from him, that it works in with the Fibonacci sequence, right? The math sequence where you add the previous two numbers and you get the third. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. The idea is that you have this multiplier effect, and that's what we have with our travesty culture. Morrow writes, travesty is a phenomenon of politics and culture, is what happens when exaggeration has no place left to go. Things are first stretched, then grossly parodied, then done to death. Travesty abhors compromise, scorns moderation or careful thought. The travesty left and travesty right are twins and converge in the neighborhood of coercion and certitude.
Well, that is absolutely true, and it highlights an even deeper problem, in my opinion, which is that we have lost the standards of virtue. We can't even have a logical, reasonable conversation about what's right and wrong anymore because we've lost the basics of classical philosophy, of religious theology. Those things have been left behind. And so we have people on the left who are talking absolute madness, like men and women are the same and all cultures deserve respect, which is nonsense. And then on the right, we have people who know that's not true, but don't know why it's not true. And they'll say, well, it's in the Bible, or they'll say, I just feel this, or science says. They've forgotten the structure of morality that built the West. And I think that so all we're left with is emotions. All we're left with is screaming at one another and never coming to a resolution because we're just basically talking about what feels right and what feels wrong. And that's why actors become our moral guides.
Are you still a big Trump supporter?
I've never been a big Trump supporter. I'm a big supporter of the things he accomplished in his first year. I always have been very critical of Trump and many of his behaviors. Right now, I'm very upset with his remarks on guns and this idea of a tariff. I mean, I don't know. Presidents seem to bumble into tariffs every couple of years. Mm-hmm. They never work, and then they pull them away after, I guess, the steel industry makes a bunch of money. But the stuff about guns, I mean, look, Trump is not a thoughtful man. He's a guy who talks before he thinks. And so I try to keep my powder dry when he makes bad remarks because they don't always translate into action. And I think Trump has done a lot in the first year for conservatism. And I think his boorishness has been effective in shattering political correctness, which needed to be done.
Just going back to culture for a second, particularly entertainment, this is maybe important to you. I just want to make sure you had the heads up on this. ComicCon, which is at the Washington State Convention Center in Seattle, of course. They are having no straight, no white males allowed parties at Comic-Con. So the industry mixers are for like women and gender queer, people of color, LGBTQIA.
What's the IA?
I'm not exactly sure. So if you were going out to that, Andrew, I just wanted to give you the heads up about the strictures.
Well, leftism always accomplishes the opposite of what it intends to do. I mean, this is not just happening here. It's happening in colleges where they have segregated dorms. They have black dorms. I mean, Martin Luther King would roll over in his grave, basically.
Isn't the whole point of Comic-Con for dorks to try and meet a girl?
Exactly. To meet a girl while wearing a Star Wars outfit.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was your lightsaber. I mean, well, our poor executive producer Keith Conrad, he always goes to Comic-Con. I guess he can't go now. Or maybe
he just can't go to the industry mixers.
But that's why you go.
Or he's gonna, have to don a different sort of uniform costume. But I mean, you, Andrew, you write about culture all the time, and for a long time we thought it would be contained on college campuses. Oh, that's just crazy, college kids, and then they'll grow up and grow out of it once they get in the workforce. But what happened is they grew up, they got into the workforce, they took over all the other cultural civic institutions, and as Andrew Sullivan wrote a couple weeks ago, it's one big college campus now.
Yes and no. What's happening is you have a culture on the left that silences dissent, that fires you if you say men and women are different, that won't let you say certain things in the workplace. Then you have a culture on the right where we're actively talking ideas, we say shocking things to one another, we laugh at each other's differences, we talk. Which one do you think America is ultimately going to opt for? I mean, do we really want a culture where people are shut up? Tyranny always collapses because people need to be free and they need to discuss things and talk things, and they resent it when you tell them they can't do it. The left has been the culture of shut up for 50 years. Some of that has leaked into big business because big business always trends left because big government is great for big business. But the places where culture lives and springs up and new businesses spring up, it's always got to be free. And so I think it may look for a moment like liberals are winning the culture war by shutting people up, but I think in the long run people will opt for a culture of freedom and laughter and goodwill, which is what's happening on the right. You go to ComicCon, there's nobody yelling at each other, there's nobody screaming. At ComicCon, you go to CPAC, and there's nobody yelling and screaming. There are people discussing and laughing and having a great time. You look at the left, and they're constantly shocked, constantly outraged, and constantly furious. I do not think it's a good look.
Do you think the corporations that have distanced themselves from the NRA, kind of publicly repudiated 5 million NRA members like Delta, will live to regret it? Megan McArdle writing in the Washington Post over the weekend that they probably will.
Yes, that's the thing. On Instapundit, my friend Glenn Reynolds, he always says, "Go woke, go broke." And I think what's really interesting is when you look at Chick-fil-A, who took all that fire because their CEO didn't approve of gay marriage. When you look at FedEx, which stood up to the pressure and stuck with the NRA, they do great. And eventually people look over and say, all this noise is just noise. And the people actually don't mind Donald Trump. The people actually want their guns. The people actually, do have nuanced views about marriage. So I think ultimately, if business wants to make money, they will go where the people are.
He is Andrew Klavan, Hollywood screenwriter, such great books and films like True Crime. Also the author of the book, The Great Good Thing, A Secular Jew Comes to Faith in Christ. Andrew, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thanks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.